have a pike nose at the front, which you need to be careful of, so you obviously can't side scrape, but overall, the gun is lovely. You have 390 alpha, which obviously you can do ×2 for that, so that is very nice to see. And the thing is with this vehicle, the standard rounds are not that great at 243, which is okay, but no one's going to say that that's amazing. But then the premium round is APCR of 292, which is very nice. Remember, we're at tier 9. We're not quite at tier 10, where that would be not that great. There is times when you do meet people, and that is just not enough. If you meet, for example, like a Type 5 Heavy, you can start getting into issues, especially if he's angled just slightly. Then yes, that can be a bit of a problem. But on the most of the time, this is more than enough. And your dispersion is also 0.4, which up close really doesn't matter. So this is a very, very nice hold down tank with a good gun and decent enough top speed as well. It goes at 38 with 14 pound to weight, and it has 1,800 hit points. Very, very good overall as a package. You then get up to the tier 10, which doesn't really feel the same, because this is the ST2, which is basically the ST1, but with double barrels. Although I will say the armor layout is a lot better than the ST1, so it's not like you have the same armor layout a tier below and it's just been bumped up to tier 10. It is better. You have 440 alpha, you have 258 standard pen, and 310 heat pen. Very, very nice. Again, you have that 0.4 dispersion, the exact same as the IS-3 too. But as you can see, you still have this weak spot up here, which is sort of a weak spot, but then sort of isn't at the same time. But you also have the frontal bit here, lower plate, obviously you can easily pen. And at tier 10, this does become pretty easy to pen for most people, especially if they're firing premium. They're going to go straight through the front here. But overall, the tank is good. It's fine. No one's going to say that this is a bad vehicle. The gun feels nice. You don't need stab on this vehicle. It can work very, very well. So overall, medium skill level, because you need to kind of learn a little bit about the gun. But apart from that, the tanks are pretty forgiving for the most part. You obviously need to be wary of the pike nose design, and maybe the IS-22 could be a little bit unforgiving as well. But on the whole, I mean, the line in general is pretty good. We now move on to the Object 430U. Now, this vehicle is not really a medium tank. It shares the medium tank class and it shares the medium tank line with the 140, but it's not really a medium at the end of the day. Starting out, you obviously go down to the BT7, then you go to the T34. The T34 will teach you the basics of medium tanks and is very, very good for learning medium tanks. You then go up to the T34-85, which again is just a follow-on, a nice successor to the T34. The exact same can be said about the T43 and the T44. So far, this is just pure learning how to medium tank, and everything is very, very similar to the last tank. You then, however, split off from the line and go to the 430, which is very different from the T44. This tank is not only one of the best stock grinds in the game, because there's basically nothing for you to research, but it's also one of those tanks that you start to realize this is more of a heavy medium than a pure medium. This has very good armor on the turret and on the hull, and combined with this, you can afford to go around with the heavy tanks and support them rather than going around with the medium tanks and supporting them. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go with your medium tanks, because you can, and you're a very, very hard tank to actually fight for other medium tanks. But you also don't have the gun depression. You actually have -5 degrees, which can be a bit of a problem, especially if you're on a medium tank line where you do need a little bit of gun depression, because yes, fighting other tanks on ridge lines, etc., you're not in for a fun time. You do get a 390 alpha damage gun with 238 standard pen, which is not good at all. A bit better than what you get at the E50. But then you do also get APCR, as the premium round with 270. So exactly the same kind of alpha damage and pretty similar DPM actually to what you get on the E50. However, this one is nowhere close to being the accuracy of the E50. And then once you move through the 430, you go to the 430U, which then gets a 440 alpha damage gun, 252 standard pen, and 340 heat, which is really, really nice. And you're basically a heavy tank at this stage, because this is, for many people, a better 113. You have the armor, you have the pen, and you also have mobility. And combined, it's very, very powerful. But overall, this line is another golden line. Like, you should go and grind this if you're new to the game, but for different reasons. Like, it will teach you about medium tanks up until tier 8, and then if you want to maybe learn about heavy tanks and how they play as well, while still being fully flexible to play as a medium tank, this is the line. Because you can basically go and do whatever you want. If you want to go to the medium tank flank, go and do it. If you want to go to the heavy tank flank, go and do it. It's incredibly flexible. The only thing that you really do need to watch out for on this vehicle is the gun depression. Again, -5, just like the 430. We're now going to go and speak about the Object 140, which shares the same line as the 430U, but it splits off from the T44 to the T54. This is the line that kind of continues on from the T44. And you do just get better and better and better as you keep going up. The thing is with the T54 at tier 9 is that you get the choice of 2 guns, and none of them are really that nice if you don't want to spam gold. Because as you can see, this has 201 pen or 219 pen for the standard round. And then you get 330 heat as the premium round for both. Yeah, you either have a gun which has bad accuracy but higher DPM, or you have better accuracy but lower DPM. And for most people, this is where it is just a massive credit sink to actually grind out the T54 to then go and get the tier 10. So just be warned that it's probably going to cost you a fair amount to actually grind out the T54 to get the 140. But once you do get the Object 140, it's quite a nice vehicle. The only problem with this tank, and I mean genuinely the only problem with this tank, is that it's 320 alpha. In nowadays World of Tanks, that's not that good. With the amount of tanks that have 390 alpha and 360 alpha, 320 really does feel very, very low. And with the amount of track HP in the game now as well, 320 really doesn't help itself there. Perma-tracking someone used to be the 140 speciality, now it just struggles. Besides that though, you are pretty well camoed, you're fast enough at going 55 in top speed, and you also have a little bit of armor, not loads, especially hardly any in the hull, but the turret armor is pretty good, with 2 cupolas that you can still get penned. And unlike most other Soviet mediums, this actually has -7 degrees of gun depression, which means it can sort of play a ridgeline up to a certain degree. Well, 7 degrees actually, max. But unlike the T54, which you've just played, you have 264 standard pen with very nice shell velocity, and 330 heat with not so nice shell velocity, but it's 330 heat at the end of the day. But honestly, the biggest issue is the alpha damage. It just feels really quite lacking.